Have you wondered about living elsewhere in your retirement? Well, we have almost daily. No, it's not a simple decision, especially when two people are involved.
Hi, this is
Gil
and Gene of Retire There, a podcast about retirement destinations. We live in Brooklyn, New York. Having grown up and worked in this area of the country, we're hoping to relocate when we're both retired. For us, it's the weather, the chaos, the noise, and the yearning to be near nature and not within 3 feet of human beings.
That's right. In February 2020, we embarked on our journey to find that special place. We spent a week in Winter Park, Florida, which is beautiful, but something said it wasn't for us. As we were planning for the next trip, the pandemic arrived. Gene then gave birth.
I gave birth?
To this podcast. With so many baby boomers retiring, many must be relocating. Why not connect with and learn from them?
Here's a little background about us.
I'm Asian, born in Brazil, and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm an engineer turned attorney turned podcaster. I recently retired from a university career practicing higher education law. I loved the academic environment, but it was time to do something else. I no longer have to set an alarm, drive in BQE traffic, or work with people who don't always share the same principles. Ooh, did I just say that? You bet I did. I traded all that in to binge crime dramas into the wee hours, just a little bit, to develop the podcast, to volunteer, practice metalsmithing, tackle our possessions. No regrets so far. Gene?
I'm not Asian, and as Gil mentioned, I'm not retired. I'm just plain tired.
Oh.
Born and raised in Long Island, New York, a place I always wanted to leave. I'm a law librarian working in a court who loves his job, but we're retired by the time we select our ideal location. We will be speaking to folks from across the street to across the globe who have moved to their dream venues and more. So please stay tuned and remember, if you know anyone who has moved anywhere for retirement, let us know.
Thank you. Bon dia. Today we'll be chatting with Alyson Sheldrake, who retired to Aljezur, a small coastal village in the Algarve region of Portugal, with her husband, Dave. Yes, we brought the Algarve to you on episode 26 in April 2021 regarding the city or town of Tavira. Aljezur, however, is on the west coast, while Tavira is on the east. And where exactly is the Algarve, you ask? Southern Portugal. Aljezur is a small town of around 6,000 residents. It is the largest producer of sweet potatoes in Portugal. Didn't know that, Gene. So they are present in its soups, stews, and pastries. In fact, Aljezur has an annual sweet potato festival each October. Oh my God, how cool is that? It's like the garlic festival in California.
Yeah.
The sea produces another regional delicacy, the gooseneck barnacle. It thrives on the surf-pounded rocks and are bravely harvested by the intrepid local fishermen. Grilled fresh fish and a hearty selection of shellfish, including mussels, sea urchins, and crab, go into these tasty shellfish stews. So that's another thing we will look forward to when we visit Portugal, Gene, when you retire. Here's a little background about the Sheldrakes. Gene?
Alyson was born in Birmingham, UK, and managed unintentionally to lose her Birmingham accent when she attended the local grammar school. She completed an honors degree in sport and included a PGCE year on top of that to add a secondary teaching degree to her qualifications. She then decided to join the police, serving 13 years before leaving to further her career in the field of education, eventually working as Director of Education for the Church of England in Devon. Dave was born in Devon and had a career in law enforcement. He serves the Devon and Cornwall Police for over 31 years and retired as a police sergeant. The couple have been together for over 25 years and still enjoy each other's company. Well, that's good.
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
In the late 90s, they first discovered the unspoiled and quaint fishing village of Ferragudo in the Algarve, eventually buying a house there in 2006. In 2011, they realized their dream, moving permanently from the UK to live in the Algarve. By 2018, Ferragudo had become more touristy and busier. particularly in the summer months. Consequently, the couple moved to the quieter town of Aljezur on the west coast of the Algarve.
So both Alyson and Dave had creative hobbies that they longed to give more time to. And the move to Portugal provided them the perfect opportunity to start their own small businesses. Dave working as a professional photographer and Alyson delving into painting. She is now a successful and sought-after artist, and since 2020 is also a self-published author, having written and produced 7 books to date. Her first books were travel memoirs about their move to live in the Algarve, followed by a series of travel anthologies. Her latest book, Cat the Dog, the remarkable tale of a rescued Spanish water dog, is currently riding high on Amazon's charts. And by the way, that's Cat with a K. It's about the story of their rescued and much loved dog. All of Alyson's books and Dave's photography work will be listed in the show notes. The Sheldrakes also produce a popular free monthly newsletter, which, as they describe, it's more like an online magazine. And we will list that in the show notes as well. Hi, Alyson. Welcome to Retire There. Unfortunately, we understand Dave is unable to join us as this is the busy season for his photography business. I suspect it's all the summer weddings which keeps him so busy. Oh, by the way, Gene, I think this is our first episode with former law enforcement. Is it not?
No.
No. All right. So would you please tell us what brought you and Dave to Portugal and specifically to Aljezur?
Well, thank you. First of all, can I just say thank you for having me on the show? It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yeah, Dave's very sorry. It's just a busy time of year.
Yes.
Summer months. So.
And thank you.
Just me today, although the dog might come and join us in a bit as well. So you,
all right.
double whammy there. Okay, so why did we move abroad? Well, I don't think we ever planned to be honest. Dave remembers being, very early in his police career, travelling abroad, and he came to Tavira, funnily enough, back in the 70s, long before tourism really had arrived in the Algarve, long before even I met him, and remembers just falling in love with the area and thinking, maybe one day when I retire, I'd like to live abroad. But it was just one of those wishful dreams, I think, back then. We got together, we had a bit of a wish list of places around the world we wanted to travel to. And we had a bit of a motto that said we won't go back to the same place twice. So we travelled to Venice, Hong Kong. Our honeymoon was in South Africa and Cape Town. And we came back from a holiday in Spain and we met friends who looked amazingly well and happy. And we started chatting to them and said, where have you gone? Yeah, we've just been on holiday to Portugal. And they said, but you're going away soon, aren't you? You look like you really need a holiday. And we kind of sat there and thought, we've just come back from our holiday. Do we really look that stressed from our jobs? I know policing is difficult, but it was... Yeah. And they looked amazing. So we literally chatted them up, found out they rented a tiny little fisherman's cottage in Ferragudo on the Algarve, found out who they rented from and said, do you think they'd let us rent? And we just literally, I think we paid £100 for the week, a last minute holiday, and we just packed our bags, scruffy little set of directions in hand, and landed at Faro Airport. And initially just thought it's just another of our one-off, never go back twice, let's just see what. And naively I think we thought it would be a bit like Spain, if I'm honest.
How so? Tell us what you mean.
Well, it's Iberian Peninsula. We thought it was similar food, similar climate. Mm-hmm. Didn't really know much about Portugal, to be honest. I think a lot of Brits travel to Spain, less come to Portugal. Well, we didn't have time to research. I think we picked the keys up and 3 days later the plane landed. So
wow.
we didn't do a lot of research before we arrived. And we totally fell in love with Ferragudo. I can't even describe how amazing. We're talking 20 years ago now.
Okay.
When it was still really a working fishing village. There was some tourism, but a lot of the Algarve had been developed and they sort of skipped around Ferragudo. So it still had that unspoilt traditional fishing village feel to it. And you drive into Ferragudo and you drive along the top road and you suddenly turn a corner and the whole of the harbour spreads out in front of you. It's
oh, wow.
just It's stunning. It's all whitewashed little cottages that tumble down the hill. There's a little church sits on the top. The boats clank and clang on the water. They're all the traditional painted fishing boats. Mm-hmm. Blue sky, beautiful sunshine. I think it was September the first time we came. So that's a magical month as well. And we fell in love with the place, just as simple as that. We didn't think we were going to. And we joked that this one-off trip that we did quickly became do you think we could go back to Ferragudo again? Do you think they'd let us rent the cottage again?
No, it's a violation of our rule.
All the rules. Yeah, absolutely. And the people that own the cottage laughed because we actually stayed there more than they did. And we ended up, we left things behind. We did odd jobs for them. I always remember we sat in the square one day and both of us, we had the same moment. We were just sitting having a coffee and Dave and I looked at each other and both at the same time went, I could live here. And we'd never for a moment even imagined in our wildest dreams that we would be able to live abroad. I'm a working class girl from Birmingham. Yeah. I grew up in a very small little terrace, 2 up, 2 down house. And my parents, I remember my dad actually pawning things. When I got through the 11 plus for my grammar school, there was a huge long list of uniform that you had to have to go to the school. And it was, I remember it being about £120. We're going back. I was 1980 when I started secondary school. And my dad pawned some things to be able to afford to buy this uniform that I needed in order to go to grammar school. So I'm a real working class. I'm proud of it. I grew up. If you've watched Peaky Blinders, that's where I grew up. Sparkbrook is my place. Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would one day actually buy a house abroad and move there. And Dave was the same, really, working class lad, policeman all his life. But there was something about Ferragudo that was so special. We both felt at home straight away. We loved the local people. The food that you've mentioned is amazing. It's very simple food, but it's really good, tasty, good food. But yeah, and we were work-wise, I'd left the police by the point we'd actually decided that we wanted to buy a house here. And we were renting on purpose in a different part of the UK. We'd moved to Dorset. So we had the money in the bank from the sale of our house in Devon, which is always fatal, isn't it, to know that you've actually got money sat in the bank. Yeah. We looked at house prices in the UK. We looked at Ferragudo and realised that we could buy so much more for our money in Ferragudo. So we did. We bravely bought a house. We still had... Dave was still in the police at that time. He hadn't quite retired. So it was always the plan once Dave retired from the police that we would actually move permanently out here. But we actually waited about 5 years, I think it was, between buying that house and still working in the UK. And they were 5 long years when all we wanted to do was come out here. So,
that's such a wonderful story. So my first question is, both of you being police officers in the past, you have your pensions, yes?
Well, Dave does. Yes, I don't yet.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave did. He did his full 30. Well, he did 31 years. So he retired when Dave joined. It's changed now, but British policing, you did 30 years,
I see.
And then you got a pension. And people always go, "Oh, you're very lucky," and I'm thinking, yeah, but the police pension's quite an interesting one. It's actually, imagine a pot with money in it. Serving police officers put money into that pot. And retired police officers take the same money out of that pot. And that's their retirement. There's no government top up, so it's not a pension scheme like many others in the UK. Right. Most of the I think the fire service is similar as well, but it's actually an interesting. So Dave for 31 years paid 11.5% of his salary into his pension, in effect. So he kind of feels he deserves it now.
Absolutely.
Having done that long and worked.
Right.
And it's a good pension. I won't deny it. It's not amazing. It's enough for us to live on here. Whereas if we were in the UK trying to survive on Dave's pension, one or probably both of us would still have to work because it wouldn't be enough to live a reasonable life with. So it's not, don't go getting excited about police pensions. They're not that great.
Peaky Blinders is actually on my also watch list. From watching, I guess I could call myself some kind of British watchophile. What's the word I'm thinking? But I always hear, well, he's a pensioner, isn't he? Or so it seems to me that all these people are pensioners, but I had no idea it was 30 years.
So Dave gets his pension, and you didn't work there as long. Are you going to get a pension when you hit a certain age, or are you never going to get it?
Yeah, no, I will. Because, Dave retired at 52 after his 30 years. So I did 13 years policing. So I've banked those 13 years. They're frozen till I'm 60. And I'll get 13 years worth of police pension at 60.
Sure.
But then I worked in education, so I've got a couple of smaller education pensions that are local government and Church of England. So they'll both kick in at 65, I think they are. And then I'm not sure, old age pension. I haven't done enough to get a full British old age pension. I did about 22 years of full work in the UK. I think I've got to do 35 to get a full one. So
wow,
because you did contribute that 11+%, right? While as a police officer, so it makes sense. They wouldn't just not give you.
No. It's
interesting.
Yeah, okay. They just sit there waiting for me to hit 60, 65, and 66. So I've got to wait. I'm 54 this year. I've got to wait to go.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Okay. So you're an artist and writer. How has living in the Algarve influenced your work?
I think the biggest thing it did when we moved out here is it gave both Dave and I time. And that's the one thing we never had in the UK. My last job as a director of education, I worked 70, sometimes 80 hours a week, every week.
Wow.
And that's not unusual. So I'd always painted. I did art through to A-level at school. And did lots of classes and courses whenever I could, but never had the time to commit to it. And I think the big thing with art and writing is that sometimes you need just some space and some time to allow yourself to be creative. I always remember Dave used to say sometimes if I got home from work a bit earlier, he'd go, "You've got half an hour, go and paint." No, it doesn't work like that,
Exactly.
You can't perform things like that in quite the same way. So the big difference when we moved out here is that it gave us the space and the time to actually be creative. And initially, we arrived in the May to our house, and we decided to have just the summer off and to just kind of relax and just decompress really from all those years of working and rushing around. And then by about the September, we were bored and itching to do things. So Dave set himself a challenge. He called it Portugal 365. And he decided that every day for a year, he would go out and take one photograph that he would edit and put online onto his Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
And we gained a huge amount of followers through that. And I basically hid myself away. I had a wonderful space downstairs in our house that became my art studio. And I hid myself away through the whole winter. By the end of the winter, I had 32 paintings. I was amazed at how productive I could be when you left me to it. So that was our initial thing. So we both created lots of things. And then we didn't know what to do because we said, well, we want to set up and run our own exhibition. I didn't want to go through galleries and have to pay 40, 50% commission then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We were quite confident we could run our own kind of event. We were very, very lucky very early on. One of the biggest hotel chains out here, the Holiday Inn in the Algarve, followed Dave's photographs, loved our work.
Wow.
And we literally posted on Facebook a message on both our accounts and said, look, we'd like to set up a pop-up exhibition. Any ideas where we could do that in the Algarve?
Oh.
And within an hour, that hotel, the manager who was in charge of bookings and media, contacted us and said, we love your work. Come and meet us. We'd like you to have an exhibition in our hotel.
Wow.
And we literally didn't look back from that moment. They gave us this huge exhibition space. It was like their conference room.
Oh, wow.
But they basically said, have it for a week. And I never forget, it was so funny because our dear Vicky, the manager, she said, you can have the space. We won't charge you. Because it's great for us. It brings more people into the hotel. It's great marketing. But you can't hang anything on the walls. So we sat there thinking, well, it's an art exhibition. I've got paintings and Dave's got photographs and prints. And we both looked at each other and we'd read a book. I can't remember who it's by, but it was the basic theme of the book was say yes to everything that I can't remember who wrote it. It's quite a famous book a few years ago. But the basic idea is you say yes to things. So we said yes to Vicky, walked out of the hotel, looked at each other and went, great, we're running an exhibition and we can't use the walls. So we made it work. Dave was great. We went around a few DIY stores, scratched our heads.
Easels.
And just resourcefully created. Dave made these brilliant, like an A-frame. You know, if you have like a trestle table.
Yes, I know exactly.
Have the trestle parts underneath. We bought, I think we bought a dozen of those. And we backboard framed them on both sides and we stood them on tables. And they were actually brilliant. And we used them for years because they were perfect for an exhibition because all of the paintings were at head height. You could actually walk in. You didn't look up or down at the floor.
Right, and just walk around.
You could walk around the tables and all of the paintings and prints were actually on these A-frames. They worked really well.
Really?
So it was
so interesting.
So was that week a success?
Amazingly so. We were so worried because we thought, but what if nobody turns up? That was the first year.
And of course.
Then worse, what if people come and they don't like what we've done? And then what if nobody buys anything and we just stand there looking really stupid for the week? But within half an hour, David sold 2 prints. Within the first hour, I'd sold 2 paintings and we were away. And we never looked back. It's been an amazing journey of
you guys. What an inspiration.
Yeah.
What an inspiration.
Especially for you, Gil, because you want to
First of all, I want to thank you for validating artists because people think that, you talk about it all the time, but you don't do it. So for example, I mean, I retired. I've amassed supplies. Well, I'm big on amassing supplies. I should first say I probably have every paintbrush you can, use or not use. So I have a supply of that. My interest now mainly is stained glass, but not with color, just clear. And to be made into small subjects like small buildings, whether they're skyscrapers or a cottage. And I've been watching this great guy called, his website is Stained Glass DIY. And I've learned how to do this through him. Have I made my first piece? No. I am walking around looking at street garbage, picking up pieces of glass, thinking, oh, this could be nice. Oh, this could be useful. And I've not started. So Jean is thinking, oh, she's back to just buying stuff and filling up the garage and never getting to her point. So thank you for that. Garage. Yes. Your garage. Okay. So we have a lot of questions. I'm sorry about that.
So let's talk about home prices. You first bought a home in 2006 in Farragudo, and then you moved 2018 to Aljezur. Can you tell us back then what the housing prices were and what they are now?
Well, it's an interesting period of time between those two dates, unfortunately, in terms of house prices, because obviously we bought before the crash. So, everything kind of just slowed and died and nothing really happened house price wise. We were very lucky back when we first bought that the exchange rate was in our favour, hugely in our favour. Okay. I think at one point it was 170. So that's pound to the euro in our favour. When we actually finally bought the house, because it took a few months of paperwork to actually get everything sorted, I think our exchange rate was 148. Which was to the pound, which was an amazing rate for us buying.
A lot different now.
Yeah, very much so. We actually, when we moved, I think it's less about house prices and it's more about cost of living, isn't it, really? Because whatever you tend to sell for, you're going to be buying at the same rate, aren't you, in one sense? So I'm quite happy to share prices because it's gone. But when we first bought our house, we bought it for 235. And when we sold it sort of those years later, it was 275 we sold for. So there wasn't actually a big shift in terms of our overall profit because of the crash, because everything just died down. So we were happy. We sat quite comfortably and happily in that house for quite a few years anyway. I think we got to a point where we thought we bought a big house as well. It's my only real advice to people when if you're looking to move abroad, particularly if you're looking at retiring and thinking, maybe I'll downsize, maybe my family's growing up. Well, they do, but then grandchildren come along and things, don't they, as well? So you don't actually have a smaller family in a way. The temptation, and we fell for it really, is because we could afford to buy a really good house, we did. So we actually bought a 3-story, 4-bedroom house
Wow.
with on a good plot. We now live in it's technically a 3-bedroom, but they're 2 big bedrooms. 3rd bedroom's the office. And I've got a second kitchen, which is my art studio now. We've actually bought a smaller house, but it is the right size for us. And I wish we'd bought that size house the first time round, because we bought big. Lots of people came to stay with us, which sounds wonderful. But when you're actually trying to, because we were still, we wanted to work out here. We didn't want to retire and do nothing all day long. So, Dave was busy. His photography business really took off as well, which was great to see. But it means when people come and stay and they go, can we go to here and we go there tomorrow? And I'm like, well, actually, no, we've got to work tomorrow. And can we just meet tomorrow night? And can you just go and do something else for the day? Can you not eat us out of house and home as well? Because we didn't have a budget for the month. And most friends, they chip in and they want to take you out for dinner, and I'm like, yeah, it's lovely, but when it's week after week, you have to politely find ways of saying, I'm sorry, we can't manage. We'd love to see you, but we can't actually manage it at the moment. So that's my one piece of advice. Think about how big you actually want this house to be and how many spare bedrooms you actually want to have, because it can catch you out. So yes, it was. We bought very luckily when the exchange rate was really good. Okay. And because our intention was always to stay living here, we weren't too concerned about the sale and repurchase of a new property, because the market it's what it is. The market here since COVID in the last 6 months has shot up. The amount of people that are interested in buying, and the house prices have risen, I think, by something like 30%.
Wow.
Just to share, it's really been an expanding market in the Algarve, particularly, and Lisbon and a few other parts of Portugal. It's a very difficult one to put a price on, to be honest, because we're so market dependent on the bigger economies as well here.
So would you say you can get a house in Aljezur these days for $250,000, or is that too low?
You might, yes. I think that's probably the lowest budget. It depends. You might get a small apartment. You're looking, if you went to somewhere like Lagos, you're looking at about 450,000 now. We'll get you a decent 2-bed apartment, maybe with a sea view if you're lucky. You're looking at 750,000 for a bigger property. So Aljezur's cheaper than Faragudo and Tavira and some of the other areas, because we're on the west coast and we're almost on the Alentejo border. So we're away from the main Algarve. So our prices are lower. The problem with Aljezur is there aren't many properties for sale. It's a strange, wonderful place to live, but it's actually quite a hard place to actually find property to either rent or to purchase.
To rent.
The old town is full of old properties, but they're going to need, if you can buy one, it's going to need a lot of renovation work, and it's an old build. So you can have inherent problems within that. And newer properties are really hard to find. It's an interesting market.
Well, I should mention that the exchange rate today is almost even. It's €1 is equivalent to $1.02 US dollar.
Can I cover something on that exchange rate? Because it's actually quite an interesting one. When we knew we had Dave's pension, so we knew how much British pounds we had in the bank each month. That's all we had at the start when we moved out here. And we literally sat down and worked out, because we'd been holidaying here for several years and we'd already bought and owned the house, we knew roughly how much the cost of living, if you like, to live simply in that house would be. So we knew how much roughly the electric, the gas, and the other bills would be. And we knew roughly how much a week shopping would cost us back then. And we actually sat down, and it was one of the big crunch points where I decided to actually hand in, for Dave to actually stop working, because he carried on past his 30 years initially. And I sat down and said, look, this is how much the pension will be. Let's work it out. Can we live on your pension on a 1-to-1 exchange rate? Which at the time, bearing in mind, we'd hit this 148 mark when we bought the house, seemed a ridiculous thing to suggest. Why on earth would it ever drop to 1-to-1 on an exchange rate with the British pound? But we moved in the May, and in the December of that year, the exchange rate dropped below 1-to-1. It was actually 1 to 0.98. So it's another good piece of advice I like to give to people is actually look at your budget. don't assume that good exchange rate you've got at the moment is actually going to last. Drop yourself down to the worst case scenario. Can you still afford to live? Even if it's more simply, even if you don't eat out as much or you can't, travel as much as you want to, can you afford to live on a low exchange rate? Because it might well happen.
That's very smart. That's very smart. So you kept your accounts in England, yes?
Our bank accounts.
Yes.
We kept one, yes, only because Dave's pension is a local government pension.
Oh, sure.
So it has to be taxed. It's very complicated. It has to be taxed in the UK. So we're still paying tax in the UK on his pension. There's a double taxation treaty with Portugal. So we declare his pension, but we don't have to pay tax on it again.
Oh, okay.
It's part of his overall income for Portugal to decide on the tax rate for his earnings in Portugal, but we don't get taxed twice. So double taxation treaties are very useful. For one of those where you get, because not every country has them.
Right.
They're individual. So it's not, we were worried with, I'm going to mention the Brexit word now.
Go ahead.
Yes, the Brexit word. Let's just leave it there, shall we? It was a concern for us. We have full permanent residency here. We've lived here. We've been legal from the day we moved. It was very important to us. So we're fine. We're comfortable in terms of Brexit. But what we did need to look at, and we were very happy to find out, is the double taxation treaty with Portugal is not an EU package. It was actually put together before the EU. It's quite so, and every double taxation treaty that you have are individual with countries. So it's a plan that two countries put together.
Sure.
It's not, for us, it's not an EU based thing. So that means that still continues for us, which is a good thing.
So Alyson, talk to us a bit about banking, since you led into that. Opening accounts in Aljezur, what was that like?
Well, we initially did it in when we were Ferragudo in Portimao, which is our nearest big town. The small banks in Ferragudo didn't have bank tellers. So we kept a British account because of Dave's pension was paid into there, and we still had some outgoings, small things going out from a British account. So we've always kept that UK account. We opened a bank account before we got the mortgage, which was what we set up with the first house we bought out here. We actually had a Portuguese mortgage. So we needed, obviously, the bank account. The first thing you have to do here actually is get a fiscal number. Número de identidade fiscal. It's a NIF. Everyone calls it an NIF, a NIF, or a fiscal number. It's your kind of tax code identity, I guess, is the best way of describing it. You can't do anything in Portugal without it. Okay. So that's the first thing you have to get, is a fiscal number. Then with that and address details and identity, you can go to a bank and open a bank account quite easily in Portugal, actually. I know they've changed the rules, though. If you're American and you're looking at a D7 visa and you have to look at a rental in order for your D7, there's been a lot of problems literally in the last month with two of the big banks actually saying they won't allow non-Europeans to open a bank account unless you're resident here. Now, of course, there's a catch-22 for an American trying to get a D7, that they're not resident because they haven't got the D7, and they have to have a bank account in order to put the funds. So there are only now a couple of banks. It's well worth researching which banks will actually allow you to open that bank account before you actually move here.
Thank you.
As a person, well, back then, as a European EU member, it was much easier for us from Britain to, obviously, we didn't have to be resident here. We could open a bank account just with our British address details. The minute we moved out here to live permanently, we just updated all our details. Very easy process. The thing I find with banks here, and I love about them, is it's a very open environment. Bank tellers don't hide behind glass screens. They just sit at a desk with the computer in front of them, and you queue up very nicely and politely behind the person who's already in front of you in the queue and wait. And sometimes people will walk out with thousands of euros in a briefcase, and they'll just walk past you and out the door they go. And everyone just nods and says, "Oh, bom dia." It's and if you want to see the bank manager, you just see the teller. I mean, I email our bank teller. We know him personally. We know his name. We have his email. And if I need anything from the bank manager, I email the bank teller, the guy at the desk. I send him an email. He replies usually within an hour and just books an appointment for us to see the bank manager. So it's as relaxed and simple as that. And they'll usually sit and make you a coffee. and it'll take
They'll make
ages
you
to
a
go through the
coffee?
paperwork. Yeah, it's very different to anything, certainly in the UK.
Oh my
probably
goodness.
America.
Oh, yeah. Very different. And I guess that comes with a small town where you're able to learn and meet these people and be so close.
I think it's a Portuguese thing as well. I mean, Portimao, where our main bank is a big town, really. I mean, you're talking a lot of people live there, and yet he'll know us by name when we walk in. But yeah, I can email him. I've got his phone number somewhere, I think, if I needed him in a hurry. You'd never have that in the UK. You'd never have an email. You'd have to go through the central system, wouldn't you, or one of those bots, and you never actually get anywhere. So it's very
the banks here, it's not the tellers, I guess, it's the managers, the various managers. They will give you their email address. You may not ever hear from them, or they may not ever reply, but they say, "Oh, we have a family environment, so here's my email address, but good luck."
They're not going to be friends like she is.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about the cost of living. You mentioned it was lower in the Algarve than it is in UK. Can you tell us a little about that? What you pay for items, electricity, taxes?
And also, if you wouldn't mind, while you're telling us that, if there's any difference we'd like to focus a little bit on Aljezur.
Electric's still quite expensive, I think, when you actually look across. So you would be looking anywhere from about 85 to 120 euros a month for an electric bill, unless you've got a swimming pool, and then you could double that, because that's one of the main costs. We don't have a swimming pool, but we've got friends with them. I was quite shocked at how much their electric bill was because of running a swimming pool, or obviously a heating and cleaning of it. Gas it depends. Gas is quite an interesting one, because you might be on mains gas. Our old house, we were on mains gas, and we probably had bills around the 50 or 60 euros a month for our gas. That would be to cook and to run the gas boiler for the heat, for the water as well. Here in our new house, there's no mains gas, which is more typical of Portugal. So we're on gas bottles. We've been here 4 years. A gas bottle used to cost us about 95 euros for it. It's a large bottle. It will last about 8 to 10 weeks.
Those kind of like the propane.
It's propane,
containers,
right? Propane.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally with a connection in a cupboard outside in the garden. They used to be about 95 euros. The last bottle we bought about 2 weeks ago was 123 euros.
Oh wow!
So gas has gone up a lot, literally this year. It's a lot more. And the gas bottles, it depends how often, how much you shower. Well, there's only 2 of us, plus a dog that doesn't cause her too much trouble. But I do like a long shower, so that can be quite an expense for you. Now, on the other side of it, water bills. Our water bill includes our refuse collection and the recycling collections and the kind of maintenance as well. It's an all-inclusive water plus bill that you get for them from the camera. And we average about 18 euros a month.
When you say mains, is that the towns? The water main. Okay.
Water main, yeah, just straight through on the system. Yeah.
The pipes. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
If you buy a house in a rural area in Portugal, you won't have mains water. You will have a cisterna, or you could have a well. And obviously then there's a maintenance cost to those. But you technically, I suppose it's free water, or is it? Because you still have to pay expenses.
What about taxes? How about property tax?
Okay, so if I give you a newer property price, because unless you're buying if you buy a very old property, you might only have taxes of about 50 euros for the year.
Wow.
Because of the age of the property, but you're going to be paying a lot out in maintenance instead on that property, probably.
Right.
More realistically, you're looking somewhere between about 400 to 600 a year for your property tax.
Oh, that's nothing.
Sort of price.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what about, so you guys still work a little, or the different jobs? What's the income tax like?
Oh gosh, it's bad. It's okay. There are 2 things that are going to shock you. One is, the taxes are on a scaled rate, so it depends how much you earn, but they start pretty much, I think you're allowed a little tiny amount of about 3,000 or 4,000 before you start paying tax, so it's not much, and then you're into the tax bands, and they go up. I can't remember all of the rates. I could look them up for you.
No, that's fine.
That's all right.
But have a look, because they jump up quite quickly, and it's a scaled rate, and it's the same for everyone. That's the one fair thing about Portugal. The shock is what you would call the equivalent of social security, or the NI, national insurance, that I would know from Britain. That's based on, so this is complicated. You pay your equivalent of your Social Security National Insurance every month. The rate is calculated per quarter based on the previous quarter's total earnings. If you have a really good quarter, if you're self-employed, so for example, you're really busy in the summer, your Social Security then for the October, November and December is going to be really high when you're probably not earning as much money. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not an annual amount that you can plan for. Every 3 months, for the next 3 months, they tell you how much you're going to have to pay. And it could be, the minimum is €20.50, I think. So even if you earn nothing, you have to pay €20 a month. But it could be €50 a month. It could be €184 a month. It could be €300 a month because it's based on your earnings for the previous quarter.
Sure.
And so that catches a lot of people out. A lot of people in the Algarve work in the tourist sector, obviously. I think it's 80% of all jobs are something to do with the tourist industry. Now, that's very much a seasonal job. So a lot of people don't even work in the winter. They're only earning maybe for 7 or 8 months of the year a good income that they then have to carry over through their winter, ready till next spring. This big national insurance equivalent comes and hits them, whack, right in the winter months. So it's
really organized.
Yeah, it's a very different system. I think the best advice I can give to someone is, and we did it, get yourself a good accountant, someone you trust, someone Portuguese preferably, who knows the system and knows the best advice to give you, because we trust our accountant completely. She's wonderful. Thank goodness we found her.
Yeah, how did you find her?
We actually went to an accountant first who was dreadful, awful. Absolutely appalling. And even we found when we actually got the paper, we demanded paperwork back and our fee back from her. We snatched all the paperwork that was ours by right and marched out of her office and found she Tipexed all of our amounts and changed them all and put, because we went, why are we paying this much tax? We haven't earned that much. It was because presumably her earnings are based on your earnings, if that makes sense.
My goodness.
Some of the contracts. So be careful. Get a contract with an accountant who charges you an amount per year, regardless of how much work you're actually doing, because it's not on a rating scale.
That's horrible.
Word of mouth. We found an amazing accountant. Thank goodness. We've been with her for years now. And she's fantastic. And we trust her because it's a complicated system and it's not an easy language. And all of the national websites like the Social Security and the Finances tax sites are all in Portuguese.
Oh, right, so, right. And even if you translate the pages, you're going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they change the rules a lot as well, Portuguese. So you need someone who's on the ball all the time with codes and things. So
let's talk about visas a little. Based on your visa or your status, you're allowed to work, I assume?
Yes. Luckily, we don't. Well, they will now. Of course, the British need a visa. Thanks, Brexit. But obviously, when we moved, we were part of Europe. We were in. We were welcomed into Portugal. We very quickly set up our residencia. You initially take out a temporary residency of 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, the Portuguese make a bigger assessment, and then they can offer you permanent residency, which is a bit of a misnomer because it gets renewed every 10 years. So it's permanent for 10 years. But ours is, because we're on the old system, we've been pretty much guaranteed we won't have any problems at the end of our 10 years. They just automatically renew it.
Okay.
So it's a kind of, I'm kind of smiling and thinking it's very typically Portuguese that they call something permanent and then renew it every 10 years automatically. Very amusing. Just more paperwork for them.
Right.
We just set up literally as sole traders there's two systems for working out here. And the simplified system is the one that we're both under, which is just for sole traders working independently, and we put in a single tax return annually. If you're VAT registered, then you have to put in quarterly returns, and it's more complicated. There are 2 layers of work.
Let me ask you, why did you move from Farragudo to Aljezur?
I think, if I'm honest, partly because we still had a mortgage on the house. So financially, every month money was going out that we thought we don't need a house this big. We'd owned it for a long, quite about 8 or 9 years. So it was when we started to think about, shall we sell, shall we stay here? There wasn't any great reason for leaving Ferragudo other than really trying to clear a mortgage that just seemed to be taking money away each month for no reason, really. We didn't need a house that big. The market was more buoyant, so we knew it was a good time to sell. And we knew we got a good house. When we bought the house, the estate agent that was friends of ours was very clever. She took us straight through the front door and up the stairs and out onto the back balcony before we even looked at the house. And just went, do you like the view? And the view from this house was stupendous. I mean, it really was magnificent. We were right on the top of the hill on the edge of the village. We overlooked Portimao and Praia da Rocha. So we overlooked the Portimao and the main Arad River. And in the distance, we could see Monchique, which is the tallest. I'm not sure it's technically a mountain. It's not quite 1,000 feet. I think it's 987, but it's the tallest point in the Algarve. And it's beautiful. Beautiful landscape. So our view was stunning. And then she wended her way back through the house slowly, showing us all the rooms. We thought we'd finished. And then she said, but you haven't seen the cave or the garage yet, and took us downstairs into, well, you'd call it a 2-bed apartment. There was enough floor plan in there for a 2-bed. And that became our studios and workspace. So she was very clever the way she showed this house to us. So everyone that we showed the house to, because we sold it privately ourselves, we did exactly the same thing. We took them straight upstairs to the balcony and went, look at the view.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. You mentioned cave. Is that a basement?
Yeah. It's just a nickname word for Portuguese. It's like the garagem, but it's like well, on one half of it was technically underground at the front of the house, but then the slope of the house meant that the back of the cave was a full height outside room, which was perfect for a photographer who likes darkness. Guess which end he had. And I had the other end and put extra doors in and had this brilliant light, airy studio. And it literally patio doors straight out to the back garden. So it was perfect.
Wow.
So
that sounds amazing.
Good extra space.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned the thought that Ferragudo is getting more crowded with tourists. Is that right?
Yeah, it just felt 20 years before, it was a little fishing village that most people seem to have forgotten. Mm-hmm. And over sort of the 5 years or so before we ended up selling, it just got busier. We have joked, it's apparently the most photographed village in the Algarve. And I blame Dave for that, roundly and squarely.
I love it.
We started a blog as well. When we first moved out here, we had lots of friends, family that we wanted to still keep in touch with, of course. And I thought, well, I'd never done it before. Let's start a blog. Initially just for those friends. And it grew into the most ridiculously popular blog. I think we had 100,000 views one year.
Wow.
On our little blog, because we kept putting Dave's photographs, and wherever we visited or traveled or explored, we did a post about it. We talked about getting our residency and driving cars out here and tried to make it fun. So I've joked that Ferragudo got more popular because of our blog and Dave's photos. It's all our fault.
It's wonderful.
We hounded ourselves out of our own village, didn't we, really? But there you go. Yeah, it just you'd go down to the square in like the middle of summer and you wouldn't be able to get a table at the restaurant unless you'd booked, whereas before we could just saunter down and sit at our favourite table, be fed by our favourite waiters. And it's fine. I think it's nice to see somewhere that's busy, that's popular. A lot of our friends ran businesses and cafes and restaurants there. And of course, you want to see them busy and doing well. Mm-hmm. And I think we've always had itchy feet. It's the longest we've ever lived in one house anyway, was that house. I think we averaged about 3 years in all our houses and then moved somewhere else. So itchy feet probably played a part as well. And clearing that mortgage, if I'm honest. I mean, the relief, we'd never had it. The day we bought this house, we bought it outright. No mortgage, no loans. We don't owe anybody anything. And it's an amazing feeling. We've spent our whole lives, at least having big visa bills or having a mortgage. And suddenly every month it's black rather than red. It's a nice feeling. So
isn't that great?
The right thing for us to do. Yeah. And it's
absolutely.
And we bought we bought the right house this time. We actually had a wish list. We had somewhere that we thought we were going to buy that fell through, and we literally agreed a completion date on the house we were selling. Portugal has I quite like the system, actually. You put an offer in on a house. If it's accepted, you put down a deposit, which is more than a deposit. It's an actual guarantee that you're going to purchase. If you pull out as the buyer, you lose that deposit. It's usually 10% of the asking price. Mm. If the seller pulls out, they have to pay you 20%. So it's a real moment when you sign that official document, you're signing to buy the house, and then you've just got that period of time to go through until it all goes through. The people buying ours were selling theirs, and they'd already agreed an end of summer date. So we agreed our sale date to be the end of summer for them. So we had a September completion date, and June the house we were buying fell through, so we pulled out for a lot of reasons. You want to be very careful buying a house in Portugal that you check all of the paperwork. We had a brilliant solicitor, and we actually paid for someone to do a full survey, which is quite unusual out here, but worth paying for. And we found things that weren't actually legal on the house that they'd said was legal, so we pulled out, and then we were left going, right, we better start looking for somewhere to rent, because we've got like 2 months and we're going to be selling ours, whatever. We've got nowhere to live. And Dave literally scrolled down through on the internet and found this house, and it was Aljezur. We like Aljezur. It was one of the spots we thought about buying, but we couldn't find anything we liked. And then suddenly this house pops up on the market, and we'd written a wish list of all the things we wanted and didn't want from a house. I think that's as important to write what you don't want as what you do want on a house, because it's easy to fall in love with somewhere and think, well, that'll do.
Right. That's so
And
true.
we came and looked around this one, and we literally went, this ticks everything, and it's got nothing we don't want, because the last house was too big. We had a big plot of land we couldn't do anything with. We didn't want that again. This one's just perfect. We went for coffee. It took us about 20 minutes to decide to put an offer in. It was that quick.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Perfect. The perfect
Really?
house.
That is
Very
amazing.
happy.
Yeah.
I will tell you that on the internet, we were just kind of scrolling when we were prepping. And in Aljezur, on one of the sites, and I'm not sure, it seems updated, that the detached homes, I guess, for most places around the world, they would cost more. There's one here that goes for a little over €1 million, so $1 million here as well in the United States. And that's about 2,300 square feet or 216 square meters. It just looks like a simple, well, I shouldn't say simple. I'm sure it's gorgeous, but I can't show it to anyone because it's online. It looks like a farmhouse. So that's about $1 million. And then the other ones that we noticed were like a terrace home, 2 levels with a garage.
Like a townhouse.
Yeah, like a townhouse in the U.S. And that one is listed at $390,000. But it looks like there's no land. It's all kind of in a busy neighborhood. But then I'll just talk about one more. And this one is a detached luxury villa, which is at $3.25 million. So yeah. And the view, of course, is amazing, right? Like you said, show them the view. This one is the pool overlooking like a lower pool with some deck chairs and overlooking the ocean. But of course, when you have 3.25 mil, which Gene and I cannot imagine because we also grew up with pennies in our pockets, that you're going to expect at least 2 pools, right?
Yeah. But going back,
a lot of money. I know that one of my neighbours' houses is for sale at the moment, so I can give you like today's market price. It's a 3-bedroom, just a standard. Well, it's a semi-detached, but it's an end of the road as well. So there's a small plot, small garden, and it's on at 285. So that's a more realistic price. Now that comes down to local knowledge. That's me knowing that my neighbour's house is for sale. And that's the best way of finding property out here. You can look online, you can look at all the estate agents, but the best you can do is go to the cafe and chat to the waiter and go, any houses around here going and how much? And they'll know. Portuguese people know. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And that's the way. So I would realistically, we've got something called Val d'Italia, which is on the edge of Aljezur. It's not actually in the town. It's a self-contained, well, I call it always makes me think of an American army base. It's a purpose-built, large estate of houses, and they're all in blocks and rows.
Oh.
There's not a lot else out there, but most of the Aljezur property that you'll find is actually Val d'Italia. And you'd be looking, a lot of them are bungalows, but with a decent land that would have a swimming pool attached. And their prices would start at about the 380, 400 and go up to about 650. Okay. So that's some more realistic pricing for properties here.
Okay.
And as I said, there's very little else that's here. Some of the old properties you might pick up for about 140, 150, but you're going to do a complete refurb on it. You're not going to be able to move into that. It's going to need complete refurbishing. And the one you mentioned, the one that you said was like a farmhouse, the house will probably be quite small, but the land that comes with it, in terms of arable land, will be large. You know, that will be, beautiful. That's where your money's going. It's going on extremely fertile, expensive land, which is what Aljezur's famous for. So any farmland or any property that's got potential for farming or for arable or for vegetables and growing fruit, it's going to be expensive. And behind the land.
Your neighbor's house is going for 285,000 euros. Can you move into that house? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The neighbors are a bit noisy though.
Those Sheldrakes. Oh my goodness.
Terrible.
Let's move on to healthcare. How do you find healthcare there? Now you were in UK and you had national healthcare. How do you find the healthcare in Portugal?
Well, we've only ever used the national healthcare here as well, because as residents, we're entitled to the same healthcare as a Portuguese national. So that's something worth knowing. I know from Americans, when you get your D7, you're going to have private healthcare as part of your visa and your application. Once you if you come out here to live permanently and you take up residency, then you're entitled to go to the local centre, so the health centre, and register. Now, it's from that point on, it's a bit potluck what you're going to get, let's be honest, because the Algarve at the moment has got a shortage of doctors. We know that. So our local health centre should have 2, maybe 2.5 doctors, if you like. We've got 1. So the pressure on a lot of the smaller health centres is bad at the moment. They have promised more staffing and more doctors. So they are trying to look at filling that gap. You've got excellent and average hospitals across the area. It depends on your catchment area, the staffing. I've never actually had to be to hospital, but I know my friends that have been to hospital have been so well looked after by the staff there. So despite the problems with staffing numbers and the levels, the actual care that you get is good. Whether they can speak English or not depends on where you are. So that's another thing to take into consideration if you're going to go the local route rather than the private healthcare route, where of course they'll speak English and of course you'll be seen quickly, but you'll be paying for it. I've had diagnosis. I've actually got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which was a heck of a shock. I've been fit and healthy all my life, and then all of a sudden I thought it was a menopause and my joints all started swelling up, and I couldn't even do buttons up. I couldn't open a door handle to get out of the bathroom one night. So I knew something was wrong, and I was very, very lucky that I went to my local health centre. We actually had a locum fill-in doctor covering the slot that's vacant at the moment, and she was actually she was from, which country was she? Wasn't Dutch, she wasn't Portuguese, she was another European country, I can't remember which one now, maybe Sweden. Her private practice was that she was into alternative healthcare. So although she was filling in as a GP, she was actually privately a specialist within alternative kind of medicines and healthcare. And she put me on to looking at the AIP, autoimmune protocol diet. So I'm actually, thanks to her, not on any medicine at all. I'm on an extremely strict, very limited diet, but I don't take any meds. And 3 years on, I manage my joints. You can see, but obviously the guys watching the podcast can't. I'm back painting, I'm writing, and I can open doors again. Thank goodness for her. Now, that was luck. I think if I'd had the other GP who was traditionally Portuguese, whether he'd have taken me that route or taken me straight down the medicine route, would have been difficult because I didn't want to take that route. But I have a specialist doctor at Faro Hospital that I'm assigned to. If I needed to take the medicine route, he's there and willing to support me. And I'm signed up apparently for life with him. Aren't I lucky? So
Wow.
some of the systems work very well. All of my blood tests and everything were ridiculously cheap. And that was within the national system. I think I paid €20 for an entire blast of blood tests, everything you can think of. I think they tested 18 or 19 different things in one sort of set of vials. So I've had one other instance where I went to the Central Sud. I got attacked by wild feral cats. They caught both Cat the dog that is, and I had really bad scratches on my legs. So I knew I'd need a tetanus and I knew I needed, some antibiotics. There's a triage kind of system in the local health centre. If you're ill, you can turn up early in the morning, and they basically triage you. The reception staff, who are quite well trained, will take your details, find out roughly what's wrong, and then they'll assign you either a spot with a ticket straight away and you just sit and wait, or they'll tell you come back at 5:00 when we'll book you an appointment with the doctor, or come back tomorrow and we'll try and fit you in tomorrow. So it depends on how ill or how serious it is. Mm-hmm. But you can be seen the same day. Now you compare that to the UK when you'd ring up and you 3 weeks ahead before you get an appointment. I've been quite impressed with that Portuguese system. And certainly when I went with the cat sort of scratches, I paid, I think it was about €6 or €7 for the consultancy and my tetanus. And then my antibiotics, they gave me a prescription and I went to the pharmacia, the local pharmacy, and I think they were €4.50. The whole lot cost me about 10 or €11.
That's amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Which is crazy.
That really is crazy.
So what about...
So I think people are frightened that they have to have private healthcare. You don't have to. Certainly... The problems come if you're diagnosed with something and you need either a surgery or you need treatments, the waiting lists for, say, a knee replacement or a hip replacement are going to be long. But I think I've got a friend who's a nurse who we were chatting to last week, and I think the waiting lists in the UK are long. I've lost touch, I think, with what other countries' systems would be like. I always think Portugal sounds as if it's going to take a long while if you've got to wait 18 months or something for a surgery. And then I find that's probably how long you'd wait in the UK now. So I think Portugal's rated the 12th best healthcare in the world. So it's not, it's a small country, but they're quite innovative as well.
All right. So you mentioned the healthcare centers. What if you need something more and needed to go to a hospital? How close is the nearest hospital?
For me, from Aljezur, it would be Lagos, which is about 35 minutes away. There are about 4 state hospitals across the Algarve, so it depends. Faro, obviously, is a big one, Albufeira, Portimao, and then Lagos. So you've got 4 spread across the Algarve. I doubt in the Algarve you'd be more than about 40 or 45 minutes away from an emergency hospital. The interesting thing is that the ambulances are the Bombeiros, the fire brigade, run the ambulances, and they are mostly volunteers. So they're forever fundraising to try and actually get money to support the Bombeiros. And that astounds me with a police background and coming from the UK where fire and the ambulance are as equal in rights and pay and conditions as the police service. The police are really poorly paid here, but the Bombeiros run the ambulance and run all of the fire rescue as well. And I think about 80% of them are volunteers. So they're paid a small amount per day as a volunteer. That's all. And they have to buy all their own uniforms.
Wow.
So do the police. That was quite a shock when we moved out here, coming from our background. Yeah.
Yeah. So where is the nearest airport?
For us, Faro, Lisbon's about 3 hours away, and Faro Airport's about an hour and a quarter away. Faro does do some international long-haul Atlantic. They do some flights to Canada. But I think Americans, you're going to be landing in Lisbon and then driving your way down to the Algarve. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Let me ask you, do you guys have a car?
Yes. I always smile when people say, I want to move to Portugal, but I don't want a car and I want to walk everywhere. And I'm like, you're really limiting not only where you live and the way you live, but your ability to explore this beautiful country. And there are so many tucked away little beaches or river walks, or you can climb up to the top of Foyer on one cheek. You need a car. There is a bus system. There is a train system that runs across the Algarve but stops at Lagos. So if you want to go west of Lagos, you're in a taxi or you've got to get a car. The same with the East. The coach and train systems through to Lisbon are good. You can travel across the country, but I just think you're missing out on all those tiny little restaurants and little villages and walks and beaches that you need a car to get to. You know, it's too beautiful a country to limit yourself, I feel. So we've always had a car.
But when you purchase groceries, and I'd like to get into the food side, is it walkable to the markets? Or do you drive to, Americans oftentimes will take the drive to Costco. Not us. Gene hates Costco.
I will not go to Costco.
But give us a sense of what that's like.
Okay, so I can only tell you, I guess, our lifestyle and what we do.
Yeah, of course.
We tend to do a big shop where we'll drive to the supermarket. We've got Aldi and Lidl. So there's Portuguese Pingo Doce, we have Continent, we have French supermarkets into Marché. But we both feel that Lidl and Aldi give the best value for money and the freshest fruit and vegetables from a supermarket. And particularly for us, because we're Aljezur, we go north into the Alentejo, which is where all of the blueberries and other fruits are actually harvested. You could literally pick up I always use Portuguese words for food. You'll have to apologise. Blueberries, English blueberries. The Mertilhos, I can't help it. We know that they've been packed about 3 miles away in the fields and they've literally arrived at Lidl for sale. So, you know, you're still getting local fruit and veg. Most Lidl fruit and veg is Portuguese, some Spanish. It's mostly local produce, so we like that, and we buy all our meat and other stuff from there. We'll probably do a weekly or fortnightly shop and stock up. The other joy that we have, though, is the local market in town is wonderful. I mean, Petra, we know, she's actually Dutch. She works with a Portuguese lady. Her stall is the best. We go to Petra. She will tell us not only where the fruit and veg comes from, but when she picked it, because it will probably come from her garden. She'll have picked it at, 5 o'clock that morning. Those will be the lettuces that you'll be buying to eat that day. And she has an amazing array of fruit and vegetables. I mean, you mentioned the sweet potatoes. We're famous for them and I can eat them. Thank goodness my RA diet allows sweet potatoes. I'm not allowed potato. I'm not allowed any of the nightshades, but I can eat sweet potatoes. And there's so many things you can do with them. They're fabulous. I don't know why anyone would eat a normal potato when you've met sweet potato. It's just such an amazing, wonderful thing. Brilliant to cook with. So we can buy fish from the market, fresh, literally caught that morning, and we can buy all our fruit and vegetable from there as well. And she does lots of things like honey that's local. The hives are literally 3 miles away, and I can go, and we can buy pollen as well. You can buy a little jar with pollen, which is brilliant when it's hay fever time, which I suffer from. Spoonful of pollen every morning. Brilliant. It's perfect. So, but it's literally literally I can look out of my window and I can see the tiny little bit of forest that the hives are in, and that's where my honey comes from. So it's that local.
So we have Aldi and Lidl, and where we live here, we're not as close to the weekly green markets. How are the prices of the markets like Petra's store?
You'll pay a little bit more, of course, because it's completely organic and local produce. But then I feel you often don't need to eat as much. I know that sounds daft, but if you've got one fantastically ripe, beautiful pineapple that's come from Aldi, or you can have a couple of, fruits that are literally from the market, from the back garden, the flavour just bursts into your mouth. Yeah. I think sometimes we because there isn't any flavour to some of the food, you're just kind of eating, aren't you?
Right.
Whereas if you stop and you just go, wow, the flavour of that fish is just incredible.
Right.
It's so ripe. I can literally taste the sea almost. You don't need to buy this huge big slab of fish, do you? You can cook a smaller little dorado or robalo each and enjoy the flavour more. So
yes.
I think it changes the way you eat as well sometimes if the food's that good and it's that local. I think that helps enormously.
Yeah, that's a great reminder to really enjoy and taste what you put in your palate. right? We tend to sometimes just shove things in our mouth. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, I think I'm hungry again. Well, it's not even digested.
Yeah.
And I think the Portuguese, that's one thing I've learned. And it's one of the main reasons we fell in love with this place, coming right back to your story at the beginning, really, of Ferragudo, is you sit and have lunch and you enjoy it. And the Portuguese do. And most people come home for lunch. They don't work all day like we did in the UK. I mean, I would get to my office when I was director of education. I'd be in the office by 7:45 in the morning. So I'd have left home at 7:15, mainly to miss the traffic, because the traffic would start piling up. So if I didn't get in early, I'd be stuck in traffic. So you think, I might as well get up early. I can just drive straight to work. I would regularly get home at 9 p.m. and I'd be ringing Dave up on the way back going, we had a wonderful pub that we used to live in Devon, up the road from the apartment we were renting. And we'd regularly ring those poor people up at like 10 to 9 and Dave would go, Ali's on the way back. We'll have 2 of the steak and chips or whatever it is. Can you get it ready for 9:15? And they would keep the kitchen open. They cook steak and chips for us, but I'd literally drive home, get out the car, walk up the road to the pub, walk in the pub and start eating steak and chips because I wouldn't eat otherwise. Dave couldn't cook for me because he didn't know how long the meeting would last. So we would do that at least twice a week. And when you look at that as a way of life, it sounds fun for a while, doesn't it? But when that's actually your reality, that you've been at work since 7:45
crazy.
and you get home at 9 p.m. and you've had quarter of an hour maybe to shove a sandwich in at lunchtime, and that's pretty much your day. When you arrive in Portugal and you sit at a cafe and the menu, and they bring you, you can have a few little starters on the table and you have a cool drink, and then the main course comes out, and then the waiter will wander over after a while and, would you like dessert? And then would you like a coffee? And then the best bit, and I love it, and it sums up the Portuguese wonderfully, is you then have to go and chase them for the bill. If you do need to dash away for any reason, they won't let you pay quickly. It's as if, no, you don't need the bill yet. Just have another coffee. Enjoy the menu for a while. I know, I really need to pay. Can I pay now? And then I think, what am I doing? I'm being British and I live in Portugal, and stop it. So an hour and a half for lunch is perfectly normal and it's acceptable, and you don't rush your food. You don't shovel it in because it tastes too good as well. You, like you say, you want to savor it and enjoy it and enjoy just being out and eating out. Or if you have friends around, you might barbecue or you might cook food, but it's the Portuguese, they're social around their food, and it's very much a family event as well. Yeah. Everyone goes out if they go out, they all go out, the family, the grandchildren, the gran, they take everyone with them for a meal. So it's, it becomes an event. And I really like that. It's one of the things we really love the most about it here.
It's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
And do you take advantage of the meal of the day?
Oh, prato de dia, of course. It's best thing to order on the menu. Is mostly lunchtimes. You can find some restaurants prato de dia in the evening, but mostly it's a lunchtime menu. But you're looking at 3 courses. If you drink, then you can have a half carafe or even sometimes a carafe of wine or a beer with your meal. And you'd be looking, realistically now, most restaurants are around the 11 or 12 euros for a prato de dia now. They used to be about 8.50. There are still a few tucked away places I know that you can get them for 8.50. And you're looking at probably a choice of 3 or 4 main courses so you're not limited to just one thing. There'll be a fish. You might not be very lucky if you're vegetarian, though. If you go to a very small Portuguese place, salad is probably going to be on offer. The prato de dia doesn't tend to be vegetarian friendly. Bigger places, they'll have something for you. But yeah, that's a wonderful tradition here, definitely.
All right.
You can tell I like Portugal, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Language. Let's touch on that. Do you and Dave, or either of you, speak Portuguese?
Yes, I won't call myself fluent or anywhere near fluent, but after 11 years, I can get by. I can understand quite well now, usually what someone's saying to me, and I can reply quite well. So I've had some lessons online. The only problem with online lessons is if you're in a group, to actually get the time to really ask your own questions and to run at your own pace and level can be difficult. So I've actually just started working one-to-one with some tuition lessons with someone. He's actually English, but he's been living here for years and he speaks fluent Portuguese. And already I've noticed a difference with the lessons because he stops me every time I pronounce a word wrong. He goes, no, it's this. And he writes, he's brilliant. He's a touch typist. So while we're having a Zoom meeting, not only is he teaching me Portuguese, he's writing everything up there and then on the screen. It's amazing to watch.
Wow.
And it's all up there. And he writes every word phonetically in English. He actually will take every word, divide it down into the syllables, and then write every single syllable out phonetically as you pronounce it. And that already I've been amazed that I've suddenly realised how many words I pronounce incorrectly. No wonder the Portuguese look at me sometimes and scratch their head a bit. And I think that's something I hadn't really clicked. I've spent a long while learning the language, I thought, learning the verbs, the tenses, understanding people, learning how to order things, to walk into a restaurant, walk into the supermarket and speak Portuguese. All of our neighbours here are Portuguese, and we wanted that on purpose. We want to live in a Portuguese community.
Sure.
It sounds awful to say I don't want to live near any expats, but it's true. I actually want to be living in Portugal. I don't want to live on an expat community where everyone's English or speaks English to me. So all our neighbours have been wonderfully welcoming since we moved here. Our last house were great too, but this one particularly, because it's a smaller little Urbanização, what's that in English? Little hamlet, I suppose, right on the edge of the village. We're about 30 houses, and it's a real little community of its own within Aljezur. So they've all welcomed me with open arms. They've been brilliant. Of course, walking cat means every day I speak Portuguese.
Sure.
And if you want to learn Portuguese, get a dog. It's my best advice, because you will have to learn Portuguese, because everyone will stop and want to talk to you about your dog, and you'll be fluent in that very quickly.
That's so fun.
It's amazing. Dave will say that he's not as fluent. He's fine. He can get by. But most of his work, in fairness to him, is in English, because most of his clients are English or speak English. Tends to get booked for work that's either rental properties, events, family shoots. They're usually people coming on holiday that speak English. So he needs less Portuguese than I do. But that's my advice, is find someone that can teach you Portuguese, that actually teaches you how to pronounce it, because it's not an easy language. I'm not going to pretend it is. It's closer to Russian than Spanish. It's a very different dialect. It's not Spanish. It's nowhere near it. And there are a lot of words that are quite hard to pronounce. And that's the one thing I've realised I haven't been good enough at, is I can understand people and I can reply, but sometimes the way I pronounce words, if you get them wrong, is you're saying a completely different word than the one you think you're saying. Right. And there are lots of accents and words that roll together. And the Portuguese are famous, and I'm not very good. I've learned how to roll my R's. It's not easy.
That was good.
It's not an easy thing to do.
It's
for
where
an English
you place
person.
your tongue. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It depends where you come from. Scottish people are great at it, but English people, no, we're not very good. You try rolling your R's. You either can do it or you can't, and it's not easy. And it's finding literally where you place your tongue in your mouth to make that sound. Finding someone that can help you with the pronunciation, I think, is key.
Since you live around so many Portuguese people, are most of your friends Portuguese or are they expats?
Here, I would say my day-to-day friends and the people I have contact with, 95% are Portuguese. I know some English speaking, but mostly because of our neighbours and our lifestyle, they're all Portuguese. And I really like that. They've made us feel so at home and so welcome here. And we're the only British people in this little area, which is fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Broader than that, obviously, we have friends across the Algarve that are, all nationalities. I think that's the beauty of the Algarve, is it's not just Brits. In fact, there are a lot of other nationalities. We have friends that are from Iceland, from Germany, Dutch, all nationalities. Canadians, a lot of Canadians winter here, so we have a lot of Canadian friends, American friends, Swedish. You name a country, I'll probably know someone that lives in the Algarve from that country.
I imagine a small coastal town for foreigners would be difficult in terms of communicating. For those of us who visit, are there many that do speak English, the market people and so on?
Yeah, I think if you go within the tourism band, cafes, restaurants, the markets, the shops, anyone that actually works face to face with anyone that's a tourist, they will speak some English. Some of them are fluent in English and love to practice their English with you. We've spoken to some waiters in restaurants who would prefer to speak English, even though I've always wanted to speak Portuguese from day one. I'm like, no, I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to try and I'm going to keep trying and I will get there. If I get stuck, then I'll use English, but I will always try Portuguese first. Lots of waiters will go, can you just speak English? Because I'm in a hurry. It's quicker for me to serve you in this big tourist spot where we've got a lot of tables. If you can just do English. So my Portuguese, but now my Portuguese is better. I don't get told that anymore. So you will find within the tourism sector, people speak English, particularly the Algarve. You're not going to have any problems. The problem will come when you try and go to somewhere like the Social Security office or the finances or maybe the receptionist at the health centre who may not speak any English because they will speak Portuguese. You will find the GPs will speak English. There will be some ability for them to communicate in English with you. Okay. But those front reception staff probably won't. Certainly finances office, Social Security. You will usually find if they can't speak English, someone will. And you might have to wait a bit longer.
Okay.
They'll put you on hold on the phone because I have internet and phone contract with Vodafone. And Vodafone, you can actually ring a special number. You press 9 at a certain point and it will wait for somebody that speaks English. Mm-hmm. So nationally, the system is set up that someone somewhere will speak English. And some people are so fluent, it's embarrassingly amazing, their English. So it's... yeah, you'll always find someone, you'll find someone in the queue that's Portuguese that can speak English that will help you. You know, they are a very friendly, helpful community of people. So you needn't worry.
Right.
You've been in the Algarve for over 10 years. Does it seem like there are a lot more expats there now?
I think the statistics show that we've got a lot more Americans interested in arriving in Portugal. I can't remember the exact figures, but you've got a huge increase this year alone of Americans applying for D7s. So I know that. Politically, I don't know why. I don't know if there is a reason why.
Maybe it's COVID.
You certainly seem en masse wanting to run away from America at the moment. So I'm not sure.
It's funny, there are a lot of people talking about leaving the country right now.
Oh, yeah. That includes us.
But of course, from the British perspective, there's been a lot of problems with. I'm not going to go into Brexit and make political comments. Good face, you can probably tell what I think. But of course, for a lot of British people, they bought a second home here and they would winter here, so they would spend maybe 4, 5, 6 months of the year.
Not anymore.
Their home here, not anymore. They've had a real shock that they're now third country nationals, as you guys know and love already. And in terms of visas and in terms of that 90-day ruling and the Schengen, it's been a real shock for a lot of British people. And a lot of British people last minute suddenly getting their residency together that hadn't ever bothered before. The numbers shot up before.
Of course, yeah.
So that's one of the big differences. So I'm not sure for the future what's going to happen, but certainly there's been an influx of American interest to Portugal, very much.
You won't say it, but I'll say it. Brexit was one of the biggest surprises, one of the biggest messes I've ever accounted for. It's just, we thought, they're never going to pass that. No way.
It's like there's so many places that try to secede.
Anyway.
They don't succeed.
Anyway,
yeah.
All right, let's. I just have a fun question. I asked this of everyone I've met named Alyson.
Oh, God.
I love the song by Elvis Costello called Alyson. Do you loathe that song, or do you still love it?
That song?
I know of it. It's not something that would bother me either way. My name actually. My dad. There was a famous actress. Well, my dad fought in the Second World War, so I had much older parents who both are long since passed away, unfortunately. But my dad was a huge fan of an actress called June Allyson. So my name actually comes from her. So
wow,
yeah, cool.
But then my dad went and spelled it, and then they went and spelled it Alyson. So I then spent my entire life spelling my name because it's not spelt the normal way. Yeah. And then I went and married a Sheldrake as well, so I ended up having to spell that as well. So
that's so funny.
We've covered quite a bit. You have been a wealth resource. And we'd like to kind of wrap up and ask you, what have we left out, if anything, that you would like to share with our audience, and any words of wisdom as we look forward to retirement?
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Ooh, a two-parter.
Two-parter. Okay. Well, the first one, I know we've mentioned Cat the dog, but I have to mention my gorgeous rescue dog, because there are so many dogs out here that need a home. It was always going to be a rescue dog that we were going to adopt. Oh. We weren't really sure where to go or where to find a dog. We didn't want a puppy. And we actually have a friend called Ginny who runs one of the rescue charities here in the Algarve. And we'd said to her, look, we're looking for a dog. This is roughly what we're looking for. We want a female. After that, we're not too bothered. Can you find us a dog? And she said, yep, leave it with me. And then the whole story of Cat the dog comes from that moment, really, where Ginny was actually on holiday in Spain and found this absolute poor, pitiful little scrap of a dog wandering along the side of the road, and stopped initially just to give her some food to see how she was. She jumped into the car, and Ginny kind of thought, well, I guess I've adopted another dog then. So brought her back. Yeah, brought her back. They started to feed her, which is when she started producing milk, when they realised she'd had pups recently. They took her back to try and see, but she didn't even want to get out of the car, so it was obvious. But the vet, checking her later, said she wouldn't even have given full term. She was so ill and underweight herself that those pups would never have survived. Ginny posted up a picture of her online on Facebook, and I have to say, and it's no word of a lie, the minute I saw that little dog's face, I went, that's my girl. That's the girl for me. Rang Ginny up, and she literally went, I know why you've rang up. You've just seen that photo I posted on Facebook, haven't you? I'm like, yes. She said, I thought of you the minute I found her. So that was it. So she's my latest book as well. That's the story of Cat, and how she was rescued and how we've adopted her. And we've had her nearly 8 years now. So she's a good 12. Well, we don't know how old she is. We think she's around 12 or 13 now. She's still going strong. She's an absolute monkey, absolutely adorable girl. And it's one of the things I think to be aware of is that the way animals are treated here. If you've got a heart for animals, I'll give you 6 months and you'll have rescued a dog. That's what happens out here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so funny.
She's changed our life. The story of my latest book, and she's doing amazingly well. The book's selling so well.
Good for you. Congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's nice because I'm giving a percentage of the profits back to rescue charities. So Ginny's charity is one that's will benefit as well. So
great.
For me, it's the least I could do. And obviously my books are there if people want to know more about the Algarve, then please feel free to, or find me on my website, contact me. Just happy to help people if I can. And my words of advice, I think the only one I can give is some advice we were given, and it's probably a good thing to end on, is we sat down and tried to work our finances out, as I explained, tried to work out whether we could afford to move abroad, whether we should wait, should we pay off a bit more of the mortgage, what if we saved a bit more before we moved, all of those kind of questions. And someone wisely sat in the square in Ferragudo one afternoon with us having a beer, and he said, if you wait till you can afford to move out here, you'll never move. There will always be something, there will always be a reason or another let's just, or what if. He said, if you wait till you can afford to move, you'll never move. And it was the best bit of advice that we could possibly have to just boost us up there to go, do you know what? Let's go for it and we'll work the rest of it out. And we've been some will say we've been very lucky. We've worked hard. We've built up our businesses to a point where we're now comfortable financially. But it's taken us a few years. But I wouldn't for a moment go back to that point where we both sat in the square and went, I could live here. I wouldn't change that for anything. That moment where we went, let's just go for it. Let's actually do it. And it was the best thing we've ever done. That and adopting Cat, of course.
Wow. So you both still are loving the Algarve?
Yes, absolutely. Wouldn't live anywhere else. I've only been back to the UK once in 11 years.
Wow.
And that was about within a year of moving out here. We travelled back to see family and friends, and I couldn't wait to get back to the Algarve. After about a week, I had enough, and I'm going, can we go now? We've got 3 weeks. And I want to go home after a week. Apart from a friend's wedding for a weekend back in London, a flying visit, I've never been back to the UK and have no intention of going back there.
So you and Dave, do you have much family back there, or do they just come visit?
We've got lots of friends and his children. They come and see us. And that suits me fine. That's okay. We see our friends this way around and we like it that way. And of course, with Zoom and other, and Facebook and Messenger, it doesn't feel like people are very far away anymore,
That's
really.
so true. The fact that we're speaking right now and
exactly,
we wouldn't have thought that would even be possible. All this has made it, for me, feel very close to anyone, internationally. So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention again that Alyson's books will be listed on our show notes, but also I just say quickly the names. There are 3 books on the Algarve. No, those are they're wonderful. Living the Dream in the Algarve, Portugal. Living the Quieter Algarve Dream, and A New Life in the Algarve, which I think is written by several authors in that one, right?
Yeah, I did basically a compilation of other. I interviewed lots of other expats from all over different countries who'd moved to the Algarve and brought all their stories together into that anthology. So that was fun to do. I talked to all sorts of people who've been awarded British Empire medals by the Queen, Americans that have moved and opened charities and rescue centres, and artists. And I've interviewed some people that have lived here since the early 70s as well. So Clive Dunn's daughter, Jessica Dunn, who's a brilliant artist. So famous, obviously Clive Dunn's famous actor the world over, came out here first in the 60s. So, and his family followed him. So it was great fun interviewing them and finding out their stories and finding out all there is. So if you want to know lots of different reasons why people move to the Algarve, that's the book. That's the one to get, definitely.
Exciting, Gene.
Yeah.
And all this can be found also on AlysonSheldrake.com, as well as Amazon, obviously.
And Alyson is Alyson. Just to remind people, Cat the dog, cat is spelled with a K. Don't go the C route. It's with a K.
Yes. Well, Alyson, you have been a dear. I mean, it's been a real pleasure meeting you, and I hope we stay in touch. And congratulations on everything. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Our best to Dave and Kat. And I think that's it, right, Gene?
Yeah. I hope when I retire, I get going on some of my projects like you did. I'm very jealous. You did it.
Well, Gil, I want to see some of these creations happening. No excuses anymore, girl.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Well, we did
no
take,
excuses, girl.
When work was really stressful, Gene said, get yourself a hobby, because I would come home, late hours, whatever, and I would kind of complain about my cases. I wasn't a barrister. I guess I was a solicitor, right? We were just crazy at work and our hours. So I took up making jewelry, and Gene joined me. We did craft shows on the road. For about, I want to say for about 10 years. I have the jewelry piece, which now I'm doing, will do wax carving pieces. And then I've got the stained glass. So I promise I will start a little bit this week. All right. What's today? Today is Sunday. Okay. This coming week. And I will shoot you an email or a text.
But we're not doing any more craft shows. I loathe those craft shows. Oh, my goodness.
All right. On that note.
There's some really nice craft shows in the Algarve.
You don't understand. I would sit at the booth and Gil would walk around and look at the other artists.
Such a
complainer. Go, what kind of stone is this? I don't know.
A red one.
Well, I will try Etsy this time. I will try Etsy, and we'll take it from there. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thank you so much.
Take care.
It's been our pleasure.
Stay in touch. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you know someone who's relocated for retirement and wishes to share their story with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is gg@retirethere.com. Our website is retirethere.com, and you may follow us on Twitter @retirethere_. Now, if you've liked our show, please subscribe and rate it in Apple Podcasts. In the meantime, be well.